Are we recording? Oh, on the wrong screen. Wait, is this not the right machine? Uh-oh. Okay. Okay, I'm going to assume that's recording now. How is everyone doing today?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, at about 4 hours of sleep, and I set up an Exchange server 4 times over the past like 12 hours, and I'm not doing the greatest. I went through like 3 Zoom meetings today, not having the most fun of times, but I'm here now, so that's something. And I think I deleted my wrong Kali machine. Uh-oh. That's not good. Oh well. Okay, so last week we went over, what was it? Appointment and or the Redeemer appointment and SQL. Or all I know is that we were doing like SQL injection last week, which was, and the Redis machine. I don't remember what they were called. So there's that. So today we'll be finishing up respond. Well, I'm gonna start back from the top on the responder one, since I feel like I was a bit rushing at it towards the end. So we'll just be doing that. The other box called Crocodile, and then we'll see if we can get started on tier 2. Hopefully we can. But that's where things are gonna get pretty tough. I remember I struggled a lot with them when I was first starting off. I didn't actually solve them for the longest time. Right now, I need to reinstall the VPN profile, so just give me some time, and then I'll start sharing my screen, I guess. Oh, see. Does anyone have any questions about anything so far? All right, great. We have no questions. Love to see it. Okay, so if you guys could go to, oh wait, let me start sharing my screen real quick. Oh, wait, it's bugging. There we go. And let me close this. Yeah, is good to go. Does everyone see everything? Or
Yeah, you're good.
all right, wonderful. So I'm just gonna start up responder again. Well, I need a refresh. All right, yeah, I'm connected now. Just start this thing off. I don't remember which question we left off at, so there's that. There's my okay. So machine still booting up. Guess we'll just wait on that. It's taking quite some time. Oh, it's just not starting. Okay, that's great. Oh, no, man. Okay, so let's see. Can I hit it? All right. Oh, that's a lot of delay. Okay, so would anyone like to, or like, I'm assuming you guys have the box up and running now. Does anyone want to start us off on what we should do here now that we have like our target? don't want to like provide a command or something. That's not the right button. Oh. Yep, something like that. So I'll just do that. And wait, what the? Okay, you know what? My thing just isn't liking me right now, so. We'll do that. And while that scan runs, any other ideas of what we could be trying to do in the meantime? Always try to like multitask, I guess, or at least get things done. While scans are running in the background. What I would do is I would just try to like see if the thing has a website. So I'll just put HTTP at it or HTTPS and see where it takes me. And I'm getting redirected to some other box right now. So, or I'm getting redirected to some host name. So any idea what do we do? Or like what this is indicating? Yeah, so it's redirecting us to a host name, but since our computer is not able to resolve the host name, you have to add it to some of our DNS entries or whatever. So all that we have. So all we have to, okay, so. Wait, how do you know? Okay, yeah, so we're trying to hit this, like when we access the HTTP on this thing, right? We're getting redirected to Unica or whatever, right? .htb, and well, we can't access it, right? It says we can't connect to the server, right? Our web browser isn't able to find the site, right? So, oh, and yeah, also our scan just shows us that it's running HTTP, Apache, PHP on Windows. But so to fix this issue, we should add like a DNS entry to our machine. So then we're actually able to connect this host name with an IP address. And since there's only one machine that we're dealing with, one machine that has one IP address, then we could assume that this host name is associated with that. It's just our computer doesn't know that, but like that's that's an assumption that we're coming up with. So we can nano our Etsy hosts, or I'll just nano it. Oops.
Wow.
I will, sorry.
Yo, Brian, we
Um,
can all hear you. Can you please mute?
Dylan, do you want me to moderate?
Oh, yeah, you can do that for me.
You
Mhm.
gotta give me the co-host.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
We do our Etsy hosts, right? So this thing will link a bunch of for our machine anyways, it'll link up a bunch of IP addresses to host names. I'll zoom in a bit so you guys can see this probably better. So like the way localhost refers to our computers, because it's being like mapped to 127.0.0.1, right? So if I put the IP address of the box and this host name up here, which is in this case is Unica, right? I copy and paste that here, right? Now that Unica is now being mapped to that IP address, I'll just save that, right? And if I refresh, now I'll be able to actually hit this thing. There's that. And let's see, can we answer any questions yet? How many TCP ports are open? I mean, it looks like 2. Oh. How did you know that Unica, the HTTP was a local site? Well, it's just like the thing with Hack the Box that they usually have the .htb top level domain attached to them. And the reason why I thought it was an external site was, or why I didn't think it was an external site was, I mean, Hack the Box kind of remains like within scope of, it doesn't try to like redirect to like a bunch of outside things. So this is all just because we're in a lab environment. I kind of just made that assumption, right? But let's just say I was like running, let's just say I was like running scans against like an actual network, and then I see like host names or something, right? I would like write those host names down and then try to run up like some DNS lookups to a DNS server if I could find one. But like that's going somewhere else. So like I won't dig too much into that. But that actually wait, that's a bad pun. I won't dig into that. Anyways, um, is because like dig is like a tool used to like do some DNS enumeration. But anyways, so how many TCP ports open? I mean, it says there's 2, but sometimes Nmap is a bit weird, or sometimes this weird port 7680 shows up on Windows machines, but 99% of the time it's, or at least from what I've encountered, it doesn't really do anything. Sometimes it's not even there. It's kind of funny. So like the answer is actually just 1 port. Oh, it's 2. Never mind. I lied. Maybe our scan went by too fast. So like we should always just run our scan multiple times. Apologize about that. I thought this thing only had 1 port open anyways. I forget. Oh, no, wait. We actually are. See, the issue with like putting a very high min rate is that sometimes we might skip over a port, which is what happened here. And hopefully we'll actually catch on our second scan. But it's good to run your scan multiple times in case you might miss something, especially when you try to speed up Nmap. It's nice to have like a bit of speed to it, but it gets a little inaccurate when we put a high value like 5,000. Anyways, so we have that, and yeah, it's telling us that we're being redirected. Does anyone have an idea of the scripting language that's being used on the web server? Oh, there we go. Here's our actual results. Yeah, PHP. And there's 2 ways we can tell is that one, if we look around the pages, I mean, if I just like kind of surf this thing around, maybe like do a bit of inspect elements to see if there's anything there. I don't really see anything, but if I go over here and look at all the little buttons I can click over here, I know, so yeah, so you're right, the Nmap scan does show that it's running PHP, so that's definitely a good catch. And you can also notice over here that these little, if we go hover over these buttons on the bottom left, it says index.php, which indicates this thing is running PHP. And the inspector had a get request. Oh, I don't really, I haven't really used the inspector all too much. I'm assuming you mean like this thing, so I haven't worked with this all too much, so I can't say much about that part though. Anyways, yeah, we know this thing's running PHP. So while we like, manually scrape the site, it's always good to sort of try to multitask. So I'm gonna just run like a directory brute force on this thing. I'm just gonna specify the link to the website for Ferox Buster, which is basically a recursive directory brute forcer. So I'll just do Ferox Buster tac u, specify the URL and tac w, specify the path to award lists. I'm just gonna use this one because this one is pretty reliable. And since we know this is running PHP, I'm also add PHP extensions to this thing. Just in case, so it might pick up some PHP endpoints. So I'll let that run. And if you guys don't have Ferox Buster, you guys can just run an apt install on it. I'll send the command in the chat on the exact Ferox Buster command. Anyways, so we can see this thing's just like doing its own thing, and now we get to scrape over this site. And for the most part, we can see that this is like a mostly static site. It doesn't really do too much stuff. These buttons kind of just redirect us to different parts of the page, which if we hover over it, we can tell because in the URL, well, it has this little pound sign, and if we hover over these individual links, you can see it says like pound sign about section or pound sign services, which usually is just like moving you to a different part of the page. Same with this little arrow up, it just takes us back to the top. And I guess the pictures take us to the top too. Some numbers, but for the most part, this seems like a static website. which means like we can't really do too much since it doesn't actually like do too much. If anything, like we could try to take a look at this little context section, see if we could do anything malicious with that. But we don't have any emails and we don't have any or I mean, we could try to run this through Burp to see if we can proxy some requests and see what it's doing. So we could do that in a bit if we don't find anything, but generally this isn't gonna do too much for us, especially on a static site. Looks like our directory brute force is finding some, mostly nothing. Just a bunch of 403s and redirects. But there are these two interesting pages over here. If anyone caught that. Oh man, my things because I'm directed brute forcing, it's a bit slow. That's unfortunate. Just hopefully you can load. I'll probably just stop the scan for now. I'll just press Control C to stop that. And now like the web page is loading just fine. So does anyone notice anything about these two endpoints in particular? Aside from it, you know, like changing the language being used, because now it's in German or something. Does anyone .html? Wait, can you elaborate more about the? Oh wait, oh I didn't see Justin said something. It says, yeah, there's a direct call to an HTML file. Yeah, that's a pretty good observation. Do you know? Can someone explain like why that might be something of interest for us? Yeah, so we can try to load different files, right? So, I mean, that's a start, but we don't really know what files are on this host. Yeah, so Derek is saying something about LFI. So LFI stands for something called local file inclusion, which means basically you get files that are, how do I say this? So the website is trying to pull up files, right? Which we see over here. It's using Page to pull up a file called German.html. And when it tries to pull these files, it pulls them up and it loads on the page, right? Now, the issue with this is if it's not being sanitized, like if it's not checking the file, the location of the file, like it doesn't restrict the files that loads to a certain folder, then you could pull more than just what it's intended to pull from these buttons. So like right here, I can see I can move between like French, English, and German .html, right? But if I try to pull up like a universal file on Windows, right? And I know this is Windows because the nmap scan said it's running Win64 HTTPD. A universal file that we can all try to look for, and I'll show my file explorer here, right? If I go to this PC, I go to my C drive. I think, okay, so Windows, right? Then you go to System32, and then I'm just gonna start typing it, drivers, etc hosts, right? So in Linux, you have etc hosts, right? And Windows has that too, except it's in System32. So if I try to pull it up from here, right? And if I do this, this may or may not work. So to be safe, I'll add some dot or double periods, double dot, whatever, because that tells it to go up one directly, right? Like if if I'm in my command prompt, right? I'm in users Dylan. If I do cd dot, I go up one directly. Now I'm in users, right? So wherever this server-side language, the PHP, wherever the PHP file is calling or trying to do the file inclusion from, it might not be at the file root. So I'm going to try to use a bunch of dots to kind of ascend the file path to go all the way to the top. So now, like if I put a bunch, I'll eventually reach the top of the file system, right? So if I do this on my host, right? Now I'm at the C root, right? It doesn't matter that I put too many of them, like it'll just stop where it's there. So I'll just add a bunch to be safe. And now I'm gonna try to see what happens when I do this, right? So what happens when it tries to include the Etsy hosts file, right? If I actually press Control U on this thing, I can see that it's the Etsy host file is there. So Derek is right. There is some LFI here. And that's actually that is sort of like what the actual Etsy host file kind of looks like. It looks very similar to the Linux one. So how do you fix that? So let's right. So there are ways to fix that. So in this particular case, you said this thing's running PHP. So when this thing's running PHP, there is a thing called PHP methods that you can disable. So Etsy PHP. Right. So if I go to my I'll just use my Linux host, but it's similar on Windows, right? So I have PHP, I have an Apache server on my Kali machine, right? So so if I go to over here, let's see, I think PHP, is it this one? I don't think I'm in the right file. Actually, I mean this one sort of works. Wait, let's see. I forgot. PHP ini location. Give me a second. PHP ini location. I really don't want to. Okay, well, I'll just look at. I'll read the Apache one, right? Let's just say, I have an Apache server running, PHP, right? Similar to this Windows one, except this is on Linux. So well, I can add a directive at the bottom of it. So called like exclude or like exclude method or something. I forgot what the exact term is called. Disable function. Oh, there we go. So you can add this thing called disable functions, right? And then you could specify which PHP functions to disable because it's the server side language, right? In this case, the PHP that's doing the file inclusion, right? So we could find the include function. So PHP include function, right? And it's literally called include, right? So I could do this. I could type it in, and now I shouldn't be able to run PHP include, right? Now, obviously, this isn't the greatest solution because what if you actually need to run the include, right? So some ways that you can go about that is when you use your include function, you could try to set up like a if statement to make sure that to blacklist certain characters, right? So to make sure that they're not including these double dots to go and traverse the file system, right? So that's one way you could do it. And that way is called input sensitization. And I believe there's a way where you can actually limit the inclusion to a specific directory. I don't remember the exact documentation on that though, but I think that's another configuration, the PHP ini. But that's just a sample fix on how to avoid this. But anyways, so we have some LFI. Is there something that we can do with this or something else that we want to try to, how can we leverage this further? No problem. Does anyone have any ideas on how we can? We have file upload. So Derek brings up a great point here because, especially because this is running a server-side language like PvP or PHP. If you're able to upload, say, a malicious file that runs like server-side language, so like PHP, right? And the website runs PHP, and we have LFI, we could combine them together, right? So we upload a file and figure out where it's uploaded, and then we use our LFI to traverse the file system, find the file, and basically run it on through the server, right? Now, I don't think we have any file upload though, so we can't try that out. But that is something definitely that's a definite possibility sometimes. But we don't have that right now. Does anyone else have any other ideas on what we could try to do with this?
How about RFI?
All right, yeah. So Alex is bringing up another thing, RFI, which is where the L and LFI stands for local file inclusion, RFI stands for remote. So there are some ways that we can try to go about this. Basically, we're going to try to load a file remotely, but we have to figure out how can we, load that file remotely? Through what way can we grab a file over a network, right? And does anyone have any idea before I like say anything else? Does anyone have an idea how we could like remotely access a file over a network? SCP, but I don't know. Okay, yeah, SMB, but you guys are getting a little, to keep it simple, right? What is a website? Basically just a bunch of files, right? Being hosted on like on some sort of network socket, right? On a port, right? So keep it simple. We could try something very easy, right? With HTTP. So what I can do is your Kali has Python 3. Python 3 has a module called HTTP server. So we could just spin up a HTTP server really quick. I'll copy and paste this command in the chat. This command is pretty helpful and it has a lot of use cases. But for now, I'll just use it to host a website, right? Like if I go to my IP address of 10.10.16.9 on 80, right? Like I could see here's all the files that are in the directory that I hosted the file server, and I could see I got a hit right here, right? So like I have some funky text files. So I'm actually just gonna copy that URL and I'm gonna paste it in, well, I'm gonna refresh this first. I'm gonna paste that in here now, right? We're gonna try to access HTTP. Oh, wait, I already has HTTP. I'm gonna try to access my thing. And let me just clear this out really quick. So I could see that I have no hits to my website so far. And if I enter this, I mean, I get no hits because there is there's an error, all right? You can see here, it is definitely calling the include function, right? So we were there on that part. Is RFI yeah, it is. Because if you think about it, right? This question mark is just a PHP get parameter, right? Or it's just a get parameter in general. When you send a get request and you specify a question mark and then some variable name and then an equal sign, that just tells it to pass some sort of parameter to the backend server, right? That's gonna take the web request. So in this case, this include function is just being called based on this page variable. So we're just telling it to include a URL, right? But obviously we could see that didn't work because the server configuration disabled that, which is good. You could prevent some forms of RFI like that through like this. Through this configuration, allow URL include equals 0. So because if you don't need to include remote files, then you should disable it so no one can abuse that, which is stopping us here. But you guys did bring up a good idea earlier. We could try an SMB share. And there's two ways we could spin up an SMB share, and I'm gonna go with my favorite way, which is using Impacket. I'll send the command here. I'm very confident you guys actually have access to this if you have a Kali. But this will spin up a SMB server, right? So if I go on my Windows host, I mean most Windows hosts by default they have an SMB share running, right? It's usually going to be on 445. I've never seen it anywhere else. And I could just like browse my share by using the UNC syntax, which is just 2 backslashes, then the host name or IP, and then a single backslash and the share name. So in this case, I'll do like my C share, and here's my files on my C share, my D share. So I could do that here, right? So I'll spin up an SMB server. Well, I mean, it's gonna take its time, and while that spins up, well, hopefully it spins up soon, right? We can see it's now up and running. I could test that this is working by going to my Windows host, right? Putting in the same syntax as I did earlier. So 2 backslashes and then the host name or the IP address. And then like say an example share. Let's just put a share that doesn't exist because the share name in this case is bruh or share, right? And I'm trying to browse to the share called bruh, which doesn't exist because I only specified share over here. And this is probably gonna like die because that share doesn't exist. And then if I type in share, wait, actually, I'm not, I have to, it's on a different network interface. So not the VPN. So I need to specify this. And we could see like I can access my SMB share. So we know it's up and running. And yeah, this is also a very interesting feature. This is something called a net NTLM v2 hash. And there, I don't know the specific functionality with this, but when you try to access as SMB share, your credentials get passed through. So yeah, technically this is my credentials, but good luck cracking that. I don't think my password, I mean, is in like any sort of word list. And I don't think any of you guys have a password cracker, so I don't think you could crack this. But this is just an example, like it does work, right? So how we can do that here is, well, what if, okay, Alex, don't do that though, please. I use this password everywhere. Oh, don't talk about quantum computers, those things scare me. So anyways, we can try to basically replicate what we did up here, right? So what if we try to, instead of including a file through HTTP, we access a file through SMB, right? And we could see, I mean, I also put bruh, which doesn't exist. So you could see my SMB shares crying about it right now. We don't really care about that. But what we do care about is this. We could see that this web server is running as administrator for some godforsaken reason. And we have a password hash. Does anyone know have an idea of what we can try to do from here? I mean, I kind of talked about like 2 minutes ago about my password, but does anyone have an idea of what we might want to do from here now? Well, whenever we have a hash, what a nice thing we could do is we could try to crack it, right? Because I mean, you can't unhash a hash, but you can try to hash a bunch of things and see if they end up looking like that hash, right? And if they do, then you know you found the original one. Oh, how did I get the hash, right? So when you access something through SMB, your credentials just get tossed through, at least like on the net, it's hashed over the network, right? Or encrypted. So like when I access my host, and in this case, my host can only communicate it with my Kali box through this IP address, because that's the interface it's accessible on. So when I access it, you know, my stuff got passed through on the network level. We can actually investigate this traffic on Wireshark, but I don't know enough about SMB to explain like that the actual reason why it happens. I just know it does. And it's really weird. But there's a reason for that somewhere. So I did the same thing here where, all right, so instead of just calling out my host, I tried to do a RFI through the SMB share. Since this is running Windows, I'm hoping that I can actually resolve this UNC path, which is what this whole weird format is called, right? And it did. I pressed enter and we could see it tried to access bruh, and there's no such file because there is no file called or no share called bruh, but it did authenticate to my SMB thing. Yep, that's exactly what I did. And that's a very funny thing with Windows, right? You love to see it. So what do we do with the hash now though, right? Because yeah, exactly, a hash cracker. But first we have to identify what type of hash it is right before we try tossing the cracker. So I'm gonna use a tool called name that hash, which is called NTH. Now just copy and paste this hash in, right? This is gonna tell me that's a NetNTL MV2. I mean, I already said that because it has a sort of iconic format, which is like, from my experience, a bunch of text, a host name, a username, and like I don't know what this part's called, but I think it's like a salt or something, or a challenge key, something like that. But we could see it's NetNTL MV2, and this thing is the reason why I like to use this is because it tells me what hashcat mode it uses. So 5600, right? So now to use hashcat, I'll just write this hash down, right? Copy and paste in the file. Now just do hashcat like A0. This means we're doing a direct a dictionary brute force attack. So it's gonna get a bunch of words from a word list. It's gonna, I believe the way it works is like it hashes those words in the word list and it kind of compares them with the hash to see if it's like a valid candidate. Now I'm gonna do the mode, which is 5600. Specify the hash. And I'm gonna specify RockU as my word list because RockU is built in Kali and it's got a lot of words. We'll see where this takes us. Sometimes Kali machines cry and they just say like you can't crack, like you can't run hashcat. So in that case, you could just download hashcat on your host and run it from there. It's not the most optimal to run a hash cracker on a VM, but I've not run into too many issues before. My computer crashed only once. Anyways, we could see it cracked. That's pretty cool. It's very nice. And we could see the results actually right here, right? The whole hash practice badminton. So that's pretty sick. But what do we do now? Right? We have a password, badminton. We have a username administrator, right? But how do we actually log into this computer, right? We don't have physical access to the computer. So what do we do? Right? There's like there's no login form on the website or anything. You see, okay, so Jonathan, or John, right? You said we connected to SMB share, right? But if we remember in our Nmap scan, like there's no SMB share, right? So like, if anything, it might be firewalled off. It might be only accessible locally, but it's not accessible to us, and that's the issue, right? We only have 80 and 5985, right? So how can we work with this? Because we have credentials. We just, what can we do with them at this point? There's no login page on the website. And just doesn't look like there's a lot for us to do here. So what can we do with these credentials? Here's a hint. 5985 is, anyone have an idea of what that is? Yeah, Windows Remote Management. And what that allows you to do is I believe the way it was developed was because people wanted ways to remotely access and configure computers without having to be there physically or something like that. So that's why you have Windows Remote Management. It's basically remote access to a computer. And the way we can actually leverage this is through something called Evil WinRM, right? So all you have to do is specify an IP address or a host name. And I already wrote the host name as Unica. So I'll just use Unica. Take view administrator, right? Because we have our user's administrator. And the password is just going to be badminton, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to take its time. And we're in. right? And we can see, we can run. This is an RDP. RDP, so WinRM and RDP are pretty, sound similar. RDP allows you to like have a remote desktop, so like a GUI access, right? Remotely on the computer, and that's running on 3389. This is WinRM, which runs on 5985, which it's sort of it allows you to have remote management. You usually you don't you could it's mainly meant to like work on Windows and like PowerShell, but Evil WinRM is like a tool that's built to abuse this protocol, right? It does like authentication and it uses the HTTP protocol. So WinRM like does a bunch of things with that, right? So and and you're saying SMB cred. So SMB is actually linked to Windows authentication, right? So when you authenticate to a SMB share, you're using your credentials from your session yeah, from your session. So the website was running under the context of administrator. So when I use the RFI to make them access my SMB share, now I captured their Windows authentication, or in this case, like their password hash. I just had to crack it, right? Does that sort of make sense? Yeah, their Windows login. Yep. To my understanding, I don't think SMB has like custom authentication. Like you can't specify a SMB user account. Like if you have an SMB user account, it will be a Windows account. Yeah. So now we could capture the flag. It's probably in desktop. But does anyone have any other idea of how we could potentially approach this rather than capturing its hash? What if this person had a strong password and it was uncrackable? Well, it's not in desktop. That's where's the flag? Is it Mike? Oh, it's in Mike, I guess. Does anyone have any other idea of how we could approach this? Because let's just say their password was strong and we couldn't crack it, right? Like, let's say it wasn't in our word list or any word list, right? Relay, okay, so you can't relay, you can't do an NTLM relay on well, after like recent version of Windows has a vuln for WinRM. We could definitely look into that, but for the most part, WinRM isn't like a really vulnerable thing. It's kind of just like, it's kind of just a service that doesn't really have too much that you can exploit out of it. But that is a good idea. It is good to generally check to see if a service version is vulnerable. But for the most part, WinRM does not have a lot of strings attached to it. So let's remember that we have RFI, right? Let me go back, right? We had RFI through our SMB share. And we know this thing's running PHP, right? So what if we wrote a PHP web shell on our SMB share? Right? So I'll write a simple web shell called shell.php, right? And PHP syntax, right? I think it's like this, right? So that's a little header and closer for PHP. And to run a command on the server in PHP, you type in system, right? And let's try system, who am I, for example, right? And now I set my SMB server again. Share, and then the file within the share called share is called who am I, or not who am I, shell.php. Oops. Right. Well, so, we capture the hash, but let's just, say we're in a different scenario and it's uncrackable. You could see the output of the who am I commands right there. Let me actually just split up my thing again. And let's just say I want to run another command like who am I/all. I could just change it, right? Refresh the page. And hopefully it loads better. And you can see now the update content's there. Right? So that's pretty cool. And we can only do this because this is running PHP and this system function isn't being restricted. Remember, I was showing you guys the PHP INI earlier and how you can disable certain functions. Since system isn't disabled, we can just run system on this thing and have a bunch of cool stuff. Obviously, this isn't super nice because we have to keep editing it, right? So we could just do a more we could do this. And what this is gonna do, whoops. What this command is gonna do is it's gonna get the parameter called CMD in a GET request, right? Which is what I'm doing right here, right? Like just loading the web page as it is, that's like a GET request. And by me using when I pass the command parameter in the GET request, it's gonna run system on it, right? So now if I specify another parameter, let's try to do it right here, right? After, so question mark page equals this, question mark CMD to specify that I'm setting the value of CMD. And I do CMD equals, let's say dir slash, so like the directory from the root, right? And okay, now it's gonna get angry at us because it's trying to find a file called CMD, or it's trying to find the file called shell.php question mark CMD. So what if we just specify this parameter back here, right? CMD equal dir. And I'm gonna do a plus, which is a URL encoded space bar. And that's gonna cry at me. That's unfortunate. What if I remove that backslash and I just do who am I? Still doesn't like that, so that's unlucky. I got this working earlier. I forgot how I did it though, so CMD equals shell.php system get CMD index.php CMD equals. Trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong. Page equals that. But where's the web shell? Can you link the PHP from anywhere? It does have to be. The reason why we have to do a CMD, or the reason why we have to do a SMB share right now is because this RFI doesn't work with HTTP, right? And HTTP is like one of the more common forms of doing this, but it does work through an SMB share, which is why I'm using SMB share for this. I'm just trying to figure out why my command isn't being passed through. So, oh, because I think no. Do I have to do an and sign? I forgot the syntax. I think I have to do an and sign. Nope. Dang, I forgot. Oh well, that's unlucky. Because does anyone happen to know how to figure this part out? Because I kind of forgot how to do this much. I know it's possible. I'm not doing it correctly. I kind of forgot how to do it the correct way since I usually don't do it like this. Specify multiple parameters. Use a different web. I mean, we could use a different web shell, but I'm just trying to do something simple. Let's see if we could figure out how to pass multiple get parameters. Oops, I think it's like this. I think it's working. Yeah, all right, there we go. It was a small little syntax thing. I don't always remember how get request works. So just to review, I made a web shell, right, that passes the get or the CMD parameter that from a get request, right, and it runs it on the system. I put down an SMB share, and I specify the CMD right here. I put an and sign to specify the second parameter, right, So the first get parameter is who am I, and the second parameter is the page. The page is the location of the web shell. So now that it's accessing the web shell, it's gonna pass this other get parameter, and now I have this. So if I do this, who am I slash all, hopefully this works. And while I do that, there's also other things we can do. So PHP web shells, right? You could probably like find PHP web shells on GitHub and we could copy and paste them here. I just wanted to go with a very simple and reliable one. And now this is where we're gonna do something cool. I'm gonna go to this website, right? I'm gonna ignore the SSL cert. Normally you wouldn't want to do this, but I know this website's safe. And this website is called pokey.covertops.xyz, right? And this thing can let you generate some web shells, or not web shells, but reverse shells, right? So we could see there's this one called the PHP Ivan Syncek or whatever, right? This one's pretty nice because it is a reverse shell. And this covers a lot of overhead for us. So I'll just specify my IP up here. So 10.10.69. I'll just use the 9001 by default. So I'm going to copy this, right? And I'm going to call him Ivan because Ivan is what it's called. So I'm going to copy and paste it into ivan.php. I'm going to set up a listener. So NC tag NVLP 9001, since this thing's going to try to call back to me on 9001, right? And now I don't need to pass this other parameter in. So I'll just do page equals ivan.php, right? And now we're going to pray this works. For the most part, this works. There's very few instances it doesn't. And you can see we're in, right? And I'm also administrate here. So that's another way. A third way is that we could have used our web shell to upload a malicious payload and then execute it, right? But like, you know, I feel like it's getting a bit redundant at this point. But you can see that there's another way. And a lot of this comes from the fact that it's running PHP. PHP has a lot of ways that you can sort of leverage it, right? It's a server-side language. It's really easy to come up with things to just abuse with PHP. Like you saw that I made like a web shell in 3 lines. And then I made this, you could just download the Ivan PHP shell from Pokey Cover Tops XYZ, right? Like PHP is you can abuse PHP, but likewise, there's a bunch of ways where you can secure it by disabling functions and restricting the functionality of a lot of the functions, right? So there's like the counterpoint to that. So if you don't secure your PHP right, an attacker can easily leverage it. Now that's done. Let's just quickly run through all these questions, right? The URL parameter was just called page, right? The page parameter, which is following, and it's asking us now, what's exploiting an LF5 vulnerability? I already showed you guys it's the Etsy host. Oh, wow, they actually use that exact example. It's the Etsy hosts. We already went through that. Example of exploiting RFI. RFI, remote file inclusion. The only one of these that pulls a file remotely is the one calling a UNC path. So that 10.10.14 thing. NTLM stands for, I forgot, like new technology LAN manager or something. Yeah, I think it's because like LAN manager was an old type of password hash. It was called the LM hash. And then I guess they made it new, so they called new technology. I don't know. I don't know my history. What flag do we use? Oh, okay. Oh, it's called Responder because they wanted us to use a tool called Responder instead of SMB share. But Responder does a very similar thing to impact SMB share. It's a lot more complex though and has a lot more use cases. So I'll just go over that real quick. You could just use Responder, TAC-I, tons our VPN interface, or capital I. And then we could literally do the same thing again. And you can see Responder catches the hash. So the flag is just tag capital I. That's that. Several tools at NTM, but they also wanted us to use John the Ripper, which is another hash cracker, but I don't like it. I use Hashcat. So there's that. And what is the password where we cracked it? It was badminton. A Windows service to remotely access. We went over. It's called WinRM, and it Windows Remote Management, and it's on 5985. You guys can probably find the root flag for yourselves. So there's that. We'll be taking like a 10-minute break now. I didn't think I'd be going over that box that long, but this is a really nice box because it covers a lot of fields. We'll take like a 10-minute break, I guess. Yeah, you guys should probably stretch or something. I don't know. I'm gonna just stay here for a bit. But yeah, this is a pretty solid box because it covers a lot of different vulnerabilities and some Windows technology stuff. So that's always cool. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for now. And I'll just share it back up in a bit. But yeah, I'm gonna just I'm gonna let you guys do your thing or whatever, and we'll start up again at 7:10. Also, please start the crocodile machine so we don't have to wait. I'm gonna do that right now. Let's see.
So Dylan,
Yeah,
how many Fumos have you bought with your prize money?
bruh. Next question.
No?
I only see
Not
one
enough,
user
that's how
now.
many.
I'm gonna click that link, but I probably shouldn't.
Stream your screen.
Oh, it's Connect 4. Okay, you know what? Since we're on break, we're gonna have a bit of Connect 4 gameplay. I'm a master at this game.
Dylan, you just lost.
What do you mean? I'm red. It's like a sandwich. Yeah, I think I won. It says your opponent has bailed. Which is better at this game. Alright. Let's see. I don't know if anyone's gonna be watching this recording, but like we still got like 5 minutes before we get back to action, so there's that. Oh. Oh, man.
Dylan, what shirt are you wearing?
I'm not wearing the shirt.
I can see that you're wearing a shirt. What shirt is it?
It is a black shirt.
I think we're wearing the same shirt.
That's crazy.
Yeah, wait. Is it this one?
Uh give me a second.
Nice shirt,
testing
homie.
I'm testing something. Yes. Oh wow, okay, now it works. Wow. I don't like computers. Anyways, are we back, y'all? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Dylan.
Wonderful. I have successfully set my exchange server for the 4th time today. And hopefully we can now, hopefully you guys aren't dying anymore if you were or weren't, or yes, anyways. Would anyone like to start us off on this box? This one's like not nearly in any sort of level as in depth as Responder was. So this one should be a lot quicker. Do I have the chat? That's not the chat. Does anyone want to start us off? Anyone got a command for us? Or anyone already dug into the box and would like to share any findings? No, good job, Taylor. That's a fun box. It's not that fun. I was in pain. Well, deep is okay. I'm gonna start off with the min rate 3000 scan. Just do a quick little scan, see what ports are open. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. I'll just ping it to make sure I can hit it. And I can, so that's good. For most of the time you can ping a box, but if it's a Windows box, I think by default they don't respond to pings. So sometimes you just have to go ahead and scan them anyways. All right, you get that there's two ports open. I'm gonna run a scan again, and since we see 80, it's a good idea just to access the web site because it's probably a website. And there's FTP. So, and you can try to explore that in a bit. Looking at the website, it's a lot like a responder. It seems to be mostly a static website. Just doesn't do anything. The download button doesn't do anything either. That's annoying. We do have some usernames or names which we could try to turn into usernames, which is pretty interesting. So that's something we should probably note down. We could try to come up with different username combinations for these three people. And figure out where we can use them on. Most likely FTP, if anything. All right, so I ran 2 scans and each time I returned these two. So I'm gonna run a detailed scan on these 2 machines, see what's up with them. And to get some, just get the easy stuff out of the way. I'll try to do an anonymous FTP in here, or well, first I'm gonna see if I can like log in as root. Well, this gives it away. It just says FTP servers only, anonymous only. Does anyone know how to do an anonymous FTP? It also looks like our Nmap scan sniffed some of the files for us and looks kind of interesting. Does anyone know how to do an anonymous FTP for us? Yep, we'll just log in with the username anonymous. Right, and we can list the files with ls just like on Linux. And these 2 files look very interesting, so we could just get them by typing get. And we could tab autocomplete, which is pretty nice. We'll just get them. And I'm gonna read them now. So allowed. And I'll just put wildcard so I can read anything with the name allowed and whatever after it. So we have. Well, actually, I can't tell which one's a username, which one's a password. So I'll read the usernames first. Now I'm going to read the passwords. Okay, so now we have that. And we can't use them on the FTP server because we already know that it's just anonymous FTP. So what we should have been doing this whole time was running a directory brute force on this thing to make sure to see if there's any loose ends, the website that we don't know about, or some endpoints. So just like how I did for the other box, I'll just run Ferox Buster because it's just Go Buster, but cooler. Just copy that in there if you guys need it. And we'll see where it takes us. While that scans, let's just try to get some answers out of the way. Which you guys know which Nmaps flag uses the default scripts within the scan? Yep, it's gonna be the SC flag. There you go. What service version is found to be running on port 21? If anyone happened to catch that on my Nmap scan, we missed it. It's just gonna be VSFTP 3.0.3. Just pretty, at least like that. That's the FTP. It's a very easy to install FTP server. So there's that. You just install it and it works off the bat. So VSFTPD 3.0.3. What FTP code? I don't know, it's like 200 or something, I think. Login successful. That should be at 230. I don't know why they're asking us that, but I guess they are. It's just gonna be at 230. You guys happen to remember which command I used to download the files? Yeah, it's just get. You just get. And all right. Oh wait, and we also found this interesting dashboard endpoint while we were answering the question. So good on us for multitasking. It's a very interesting dashboard endpoint. Since my scan's running, my request is gonna be a bit slow. But let's just keep answering the questions while that loads. What is one of the higher privileged sounding usernames? So here's the usernames from here. Yeah, I'll be honest, admin sounds pretty nice. Yeah, this is like much easier than responder. What version of Apache is running? Well, because we use a script version, version check and the script scan, see it's 2.4.41. There's that. What is the name of a handy website analysis plugin we can install? Do any of you guys actually know this one? I only knew this one by word of mouth. I've never actually used it, but does anyone actually know this one? Yeah, it's Wappleizer. I've never actually used this. I think it stands for like web app analyzer or something. Wappleizer. Yeah, I could try to install. I don't actually have any experience with it, so I don't know how to use it effectively. I've never really found a need for it. But if you're using Firefox on Kali, you could probably just like add it. And I usually just spot MS SQL by manual injection though. It's easy-ish. We just run this Wappleizer. I mean, I guess that's some cool stuff. We figured out this thing was running PHP. It's on Apache 2.4. So I guess that's some useful information. And I don't really know what some of this other stuff is like Popper or whatever. But anyways. Okay, now I'm actually at the login page. So I'm too lazy, so I'm gonna ask you guys to try to figure out which pair of credentials actually works for this. If any at all, but most likely one of these credential pairs will work. And while you guys do that, does anyone happen to know what flag you could use with GoBuster or FerrexBuster to look for specific file types? I did it on Respond. I didn't do it here. Yeah, TechX, perfect. That's it. What file or like basically endpoint provides us a potential foothold on the target? So I mean, like we already found like a good chunk of endpoints on here. I mean, I didn't specify file, so it's not gonna find everything. I should have specified file, but I didn't notice this thing was running PHP until now. So does anyone have an idea of an, yeah, login.php. Perfect. And now we should try to figure out how to log in. Has anyone like found a valid pair of credentials? I'm pretty sure one of these has to be valid. Although in reality, that's not always going to be the case, but it's always good to note down your credentials. Oh, if no one's found one yet, I'm gonna just start guessing. We'll go for, oh, okay, yeah, I was gonna go for that one. Let's see. I'm gonna stop my brute force, so then it logs me in faster. And yeah, it looks like we're in, and the flag's just right there. So that's a lot quicker. This also looks like it's a static site. But yeah, I don't think we're actually gonna get a foothold on this one. A lot of the endpoints that are available here don't seem to even exist. What's this thing called? Server Manager 2. Oh, that's just, yeah. So that was it. There's not really much takeaways here aside just enumerate hard. So like, directly brute force, look around each service available. So like we were looking at FTP first, and then we were directly brute forcing, and then we found a way to connect the other services together. services won't be linked together all the time, but there's a good chance that you can find one thing and use it on another. So there's that. Yeah, that's this box. I was telling you guys it'd be really short, but yeah, that's it. So that's tier 1 down. Hopefully you guys have been like keeping up the pace. We'll start on tier 2 next week. These ones are gonna be a lot more tough. But yeah, I think I'm gonna just cut it at this today because that's it's kind of it for tier 1. Thank you guys for coming, I guess. I'm gonna just end the recording here. How do I do that? I don't remember. Oh. Let's stop sharing. Oh, okay, stop recording.